Hello everyone, welcome back to Upside Down Data. Today I want to talk about money flows within crypto and whether or not patterns that we've seen in the past are likely to continue into the future. If you like the content, remember to subscribe to the channel, give the video a like, and follow us on Twitter, where we put out regular updates about our risk indicators and more. So this video is a little bit more speculative, but it's really to bring up a perspective that I don't see being talked about all that often, and it's something that I think is just worth having in the back of our minds, because if we ignore this and it happens, a lot of people could be caught out of position. What am I referring to? Well, I'm referring to money flow, and what I mean by that is that in crypto, something that kind of a lot of people who've been around the crypto markets for a while, that it's kind of become gospel to some reason, or just kind of become common knowledge, is that when you have these big parabolic runs in the crypto market, like take for example the run in 2017, that's what I'm showing you here. I'm showing you the Bitcoin total market cap is the candles, and then I'm showing you the market caps of, so total 2 is total crypto market cap minus Bitcoin, total 3 is total market cap minus Bitcoin and Ethereum. So these are just for comparison relative to the Bitcoin market cap. And what you generally have seen in prior parabolic runs is that Bitcoin moves first. It's kind of the early mover. It kind of sucks up a lot of the liquidity and goes on its huge parabolic run. It'll have a top, and then once it's formed that top, that's really when altcoins go crazy. You can see that here, right? You know, Bitcoin comes up, starts forming a top, and then that's when altcoins go parabolic to the upside. So, you know, whether or not you include Ethereum in that doesn't really matter. Track the same type of course going crazy, and then altcoins tend to top out after Bitcoin. And so really the idea is that the way that money has tended to flow in these prior cycles, or the likely flow, is that people ride Bitcoin up its top, they take profits along the way, and they dump those profits into altcoins, which then go parabolic right after. So it's this idea of taking profits from the early mover, dumping them into things that haven't moved yet, riding those all the way up to the top. And this is a strategy that we've talked about in the past. This idea of being able to compound profits by taking profits off of early movers, moving them into things that haven't moved, things that might be lower risk at that time. And really, this has kind of become something that people just say, well, of course that happens, right? Because it's happened again. It happened twice. So we look at it in the parabolic run that we had going into 2011. So starting in back here in 2012, or excuse me, starting back here in 2020, going into 21, we can see again that the way that this all played out is that Bitcoin put in its moves first, and then really altcoins then came along after, and actually, in fact, altcoins topped out all the way here in May when Bitcoin was already, you know, put in its all-time high. It was starting to cool off. But really kind of this January moves where Bitcoin separated itself, and then arguably throughout this whole point, it was a redistribution from Bitcoin into altcoins. So we got to this ultimate top, and then everything crashed going into the summer. And so again, this seemed to be confirmation of that narrative, right? This idea of having this Bitcoin move and then what people often call alt season following shortly thereafter. And so the way that people have often argued that you want to play these markets or you want to navigate them is be heavy Bitcoin at the genesis of these big moves, so you can catch the Bitcoin move, compound your money that way, and then take all of that compounded profits, dump it into altcoins, which can then go crazy as a result. And so from this, because we've kind of observed this in the two big parabolic runs, while altcoins have been kind of a force in the crypto markets, you know, back in 2013, there were so few altcoins around at that time that was kind of less of a thing. It was mostly just Bitcoin doing its own thing. And certainly back in the earlier top, back in 2011, that wasn't even, you know, altcoins was not really even something that people were really even thinking about back then. So with these kind of two occurrences, 2017, 2018, and then here in 2021, I think a lot of people now just kind of take this as a given, or as an assumption that, of course, in the next big parabolic move, it'll be Bitcoin leading the way, and then we'll have this alt season following. And I think a lot of people's plans for how to navigate the market is to be heavy Bitcoin early, and then to switch over into the altcoins as Bitcoin goes parabolic. And of course, you know, that could happen again. Nothing to say that can't happen again. But one thing that kind of concerns me about this, and again, this is just my thoughts, my speculation. Feel free to have different thoughts. What concerns me about it is it feels like this is too much of common knowledge, right? The fact that so many people are watching for this, one of the things that can happen when everyone's looking for something to happen is you get front running. The idea being that if people think, okay, if Bitcoin's going parabolic, then the actual gains are not going to be in Bitcoin. It's going to be in these altcoins, right? The ones that can go 10, 20x. That's where big money is going to be made. What might end up happening is that people see Bitcoin looking like it's gearing up for a parabolic rally. Instead of FOMOing into Bitcoin, trying to catch that rally, people might just say, well, screw it, I'm just going to go into altcoins. I'm just going to start injecting capital into altcoins. Or maybe people even start exiting Bitcoin a little bit early, trying to get even better position in altcoins before they can make any kind of a move to really catch those big moves. Because again, smaller market cap assets often have more multiples in them, significantly more multiples in them than something like Bitcoin. But of course, they also have further downside risk, which is, of course, the risk-reward proposition. More risk, but then more potential reward. And the reason why this is concerning to me is that if you get enough people trying to front-run that move, front-run the altcoin move, what you could get is basically a very different money flow. That instead of all the money FOMOing into Bitcoin early, riding that up, and then dumping into alts, maybe you get something that looks completely different, where in fact, in that situation, maybe Bitcoin starts to show a little bit of life, but then all the money just immediately flows into altcoins because people are trying to front run. And then what you could actually get is this kind of different structure where actually altcoins could go parabolic first before Bitcoin. And then maybe after that Bitcoin could run. But what would happen is basically people who were long Bitcoin, who were just had all their stack in Bitcoin, would miss the entire altcoin move because everyone else was trying to front run altcoins. Those have already made their moves, and then everyone who's holding Bitcoin has been kind of left in the dust because that's not how it transpired that time. And one of the reasons why I think that the paradigm might be shifting and this kind of behavior could be more plausible is that this is actually not that exact scenario, but something similar to that scenario actually played out in the move coming out of the summer of 2021. And so here it's less of Bitcoin getting left in the dust, but more just a general rally across the crypto markets without Bitcoin being this leading mover. Now, of course, you could argue that this move out of the summer of 21 wasn't the same as these parabolic moves in the past, right? Bitcoin didn't really go super insane on its own here. But you could also argue that maybe part of the reason why Bitcoin didn't go parabolic and then followed by alts was that people started front running. They saw Bitcoin making this really strong move coming out of the summer, so they said, oh shoot, I better get my altcoin positions ready because that's going to be the next thing to move up. And so in fact, we didn't see this super defined money flow. I mean, you did see the money flow on specific assets, different specific assets running differently. But just look at total market cap of altcoins, they basically tracked or exceeded Bitcoin during that whole period, right? They were just running up at the same rate that Bitcoin was. You didn't see this differentiation we've seen in the past where Bitcoin moved first, followed by altcoins. Or another way of looking at it is kind of this rate of change, right? Bitcoin's moving more steeply here than altcoins are moving here. You're not seeing that. They're both moving basically at the same speed at this one right here. I mean, obviously you can stretch it out to make these match each other more equally, but it's about the same, right? You didn't really get as much of a differentiation. And one of the reasons for that, one of the possible reasons for this, is that, again, people might have been trying to front run the altcoin moves. They saw Bitcoin acting strong. They knew altcoins are probably going to start moving soon, get their money in there. And essentially what that could have done is stolen liquidity off of the Bitcoin pump that might have happened under this old paradigm of Bitcoin moving sooner. And we just saw this general rally across the crypto markets, more or less. So that's not to say that guaranteed we can't have another one of those situations where Bitcoin runs parabolic first and altcoins follow. But it's also possible that because so many people are watching for that now, so many people are looking for Bitcoin to go crazy first, followed by altcoins, that maybe we don't see as radical of a difference. Or maybe we even see a situation, possibly, where we actually see altcoins running first, followed by Bitcoin. Not saying that's what's going to happen or that's even the most likely thing, but I do think it's something that we need to be keeping in mind, right? Because if that were to happen, the worst thing that one could do would be to position oneself for yesterday's bull run, right? The worst thing someone could do if altcoins do lead the market is be completely positioned in Bitcoin, expecting Bitcoin to move first and then to move into altcoins after that. Because then you're just going to get left in the dust. You're not going to gain anything from those altcoin rallies because you've been sitting in Bitcoin. And sure, Bitcoin is going to rally somewhat in that time, but you're going to miss your opportunity to take those Bitcoin profits into altcoins. And that's just something I think we have to keep in mind, is that just because money flow played out in one way in the past, it doesn't mean it has to play out that same way again in the future. And if it's the case we get enough front runners, I think we might see something different emerge. Either just a broad market rally where we're not seeing Bitcoin really differentiate itself much from how other assets are moving in terms of, in this case, just looking at the broad market. But then also it's even could be one of those cases where maybe altcoins start to move. Now, I don't think it would be the super speculative altcoins that would be the first movers in that kind of a scenario. It's probably more along the lines of kind of your AVAX, your Solana, those types of things that have more multiple than Bitcoin, but aren't, insanely risky to be moving into at the genesis potentially of a big parabolic move. But who knows? And then again, what people expect to happen is Bitcoin into, those bigger altcoins into the more speculative ones. Be interesting to see how it would play out in this kind of a new paradigm. Maybe you go from kind of the more traditional, or not traditional, maybe you go from the larger cap altcoins into Bitcoin into more speculative or something like that. Maybe the money flow switches around, but it might just be different. And that's where I think it's useful to kind of keep that in mind, that we might not always see the same thing we've seen in the past. Now, another metric I think is useful to watch to get a sense of what's going on here is Bitcoin dominance. And basically that's the market cap of Bitcoin divided by the total market cap of crypto. And the reason why I say that this can give us some signal is that what you can see is that another way of looking at those moves that I was just showing you is by looking at Bitcoin dominance, right? If you look at late 2017 when Bitcoin, formed its top, going all the way, back over here when Bitcoin forms a top wait, I'll just take these away so we can see it here in December of 2017. That's when you see Bitcoin dominance spiking. You see Bitcoin put in this huge run, as a fraction of the total crypto market cap. Bitcoin just basically sucked up a bunch of that liquidity and went on this big run to take up, going up to about 71% of the crypto total market cap. But then alt season, you see this massive decrease in Bitcoin dominance as altcoins put in their run and then Bitcoin moves out. This idea of money likely flowing out of Bitcoin into altcoins. And then likewise, we saw a similar move here going into late December and early January of 21, when Bitcoin again was putting in its kind of initial top in this big parabolic run starting in the fall of 2020. We saw this spike up in Bitcoin dominance. And then after that, this massive drop, this absolutely massive drop off of about 70% down to about 40% as alt season really kicked off. And that's been the pattern of Bitcoin dominance in those two parabolic runs, right? An initial push up as Bitcoin sucks up a lot of the liquidity, and then a massive decline as alt season happens. Suck up of liquidity, massive decline into alt season. But, and as I was mentioning, where this more recent run out of the summer of 21 was really not the same as what we saw in those previous runs, you see the actual opposite happen. So this kind of being here, the kind of the bottom of the bearishness of 21, kind of the bottom of the correction, Bitcoin dominance had been rising as people have been moving out of alts into Bitcoin. Then the second that Bitcoin started looking bullish and the market started looking bullish, we actually see the share that Bitcoin holds of the market cap relative to the total decreasing over that time. We see money flowing into alts to such a degree that we don't see that move of Bitcoin, shooting up in Bitcoin dominance before alt season. We actually just see alt season just happening straight away from the perspective of Bitcoin dominance. We're not seeing Bitcoin sucking up liquidity and then moving into alt season. They're just straight into alts. Bitcoin's actually declining, even though the market's moving up in this time. Bitcoin is declining as a share because more money is moving into alts. We're not seeing Bitcoin suck up liquidity. Going into the correction, we then see Bitcoin dominance rise, but then again, going into October, then into November, when Bitcoin actually put in its all-time high, we're actually seeing a decline in Bitcoin dominance. So one of the early indicators we might be able to look at for what kind of a rally we're seeing, so if we're seeing a big bull market forming at some time in the future, one thing we can look at is what is Bitcoin dominance doing? Bitcoin dominance is going parabolic, is shooting off to the upside while the market is moving up. That might suggest that we're going to see a money flow similar to what we've seen in the past, right? Where Bitcoin's going to move first, followed by alt season. Bitcoin first, followed by alt season. But if we see a big rally starting in the crypto space and Bitcoin dominance dropping, like we saw coming out of the summer of 21, that could suggest that we're not going to see the same thing that we've seen before. That it's not going to be necessarily the case that Bitcoin's going to move first, followed by altcoins. It could actually be more of just a general move where, sure, individual assets are going to run at different times, but it's not going to be the case that there's going to be this clear, massive differentiation between Bitcoin and everything else. Or maybe even we're going to see altcoins moving first, which would be something that would be notable to see. So that's something that I'm going to be watching. And again, I don't claim to pretend to know if that's going to be what happens in the future, if we're going to see a change from the old paradigm in terms of how that money flows. You know, one could make the argument with that with those huge parabolic moves, those are largely fueled by FOMO from retail investors who likely aren't going to know this kind of inside baseball stuff about how the crypto markets tend to work, how money flow tends to work. And so they're just going to go for Bitcoin because it's what they heard of, it's what they know about, and then they're going to move into altcoins as, you know, things continue. And that could just lead to that same paradigm playing out again. But not guaranteed. And if in more institutional investors are kind of fueling the next parabolic run, who have more sophisticated knowledge about these kind of things, it might be the case that we don't necessarily see that happen to the same degree again. So the main point of this video, and the reason why I wanted to put this out, was basically just to put this on people's radar, because I haven't seen people talking about this, about the possibility of that paradigm changing. And if it does, then it would be really important not to be caught, you know, 2 steps behind in a way, you know, not to be caught on the back foot. Because someone who's solely positioned in Bitcoin, expecting it to move first, and then giving them a chance to move into altcoins, would be a very unfortunate position for them to be in if really everything else runs first and then Bitcoin, because then they missed out on that massive opportunity. And because these bull runs happen, you know, they don't happen every day, you know, they come along, and when they come along, you want to take the full advantage that you can. You know, it's unfortunate to be caught out. Now, again, this is not financial advice. I don't know if that's going to happen, but I do just think it's something important for us to all have in the back of our minds, and to really be kind of watching these indicators closely as those kind of moves, if those moves happen in the future, to be watching closely how they're forming, so we might get a better sense of what positioning is actually advantageous, and not just assuming that the past is going to play out exactly the same again. All right, if you like the content, remember to subscribe to the channel, give the video a like, and give us a follow on Twitter. We put out a lot of other information out there as well.